Thank you. Now, can't hear me with this. No, I don't know what is going on with this. Okay. Oh, it's okay. It's okay for me, but I think the camera is not recording the sound. So it's the problem, and I don't see it. Anyhow.
No sé cómo abrirlo.
Sorry.
Eso no es PowerPoint, no pasa nada.
So,
yeah.
So we have this strange screen that you can be hidden behind, but we don't want that. We want to see Katherine Means, who is going to talk to us about a space, a movement of the space, the door to the convent, religious life in the convent of las Descalzas Reales in Madrid during the 17th century.
None of those microphones are working.
They are not working.
La otra, pienso que la otra funciona, ¿no?
I think so.
I
don't know. You cannot.
Press.
Is this working?
Yes.
This not?
No.
Wonderful. No? Not. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to change this. You won't see Kate, but you would listen to her.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to be here and to present the first findings of my master's thesis. And I'm also really thankful for all of the efforts that our organizers put in planning this event. Traditionally, the female convent has been viewed as an isolated retreat from the secular world. In part, this belief is due to the Council of Trent's enforcement of the enclosed cloister, and also due to the hagiographies written by men who stressed women's virtuous seclusions from the temptations of the world. However, recent scholarship by historians such as Catherine Burns and Elizabeth Lefedelt paints a very different picture of life within the convent. Nuns were not passive members of society confined to convent walls, but rather maintained and extended contacts with the secular world, demonstrating the contradiction between the written ideal and the actual practice. Today, I will explore the presence of this contradiction within the most powerful convent of its time, Las Descalzas Reales, to better understand how these Spanish nuns conceived of the vision of convent space. The decoration and written accounts provide insight into their utilization of the binary, where their spaces and bodies were continually divided into contrasting polar entities. This is best seen through the multiplicity of the door, featured artistically and physically throughout the convent. Moreover, it was through the contrast of the door's presence, both real and imaginary, that allowed these sisters to interact with the royal family and secular guests at their will within the enclosed space of the convent. We will begin by focusing on the construction and appearance of the door and the principal staircase, before analyzing the precise nature in which it appears in the written documents, to uncover how doors encouraged movement throughout the convent, whether in daily life or in the sacred procession. Juana of Austria, the younger sister of Philip II, founded the Convent of Las Descalzas Reales in 1559 in Madrid. This convent served as the home to many female members of the Habsburg dynasty, such as the Empress Maria, who resided in the royal quarters after her husband Maximilian died. Oh, sorry. Sorry, this is my native language, so I forget that I go very quickly. I think I'm going really slow, so I'll go slower. She brought with her her daughter Margaret, who professed and took the name Sister Margaret of the Cross. Additionally, royal bastards such as Anne Dorothy and another Margaret took residence in the convent, where each accrued power and clout despite the circumstances of their birth. Therefore, this convent wielded importance precisely by the women who lived within its walls. For her convent, Juana chose the palace of Charles V's treasurer, Alonso Gutierrez, the place, as many scholars like to mention, in which she was born. For the sumptuous palace to be converted into the convent, Historian Maria Ángeles Tuajes Roger explains that the old quarters on the upper floor were converted into chapels, whereas the royal apartments, for use of Juana and the other members of the Habsburg family, were placed directly behind the main altar of the church. This positioning of royal apartments follows the example of many other Spanish convents, such as that of Las Huelgas in Burgos, demonstrating the royal desire for constant communication with the divine presence. The last room of these royal apartments, the Sala de los Reyes, was technically included within the cloister, allowing the nuns to interact with the members of the royal family. Access to this room occurred either through the secular patio or through the principal staircase, located in the heart of the cloister. Throughout most of the 17th century, this staircase was visible to all who stepped within the complex. However, the upper patio was enclosed in 1686, and the lower patio followed suit in 1773. Staircases throughout Spain and the Iberian Peninsula were considered to be the second facade to the building. As such, they were personal declarations by their owners of the grandeur and majesty of their home. The same can be said about this staircase, which is covered from floor to ceiling with rich frescoes. We can decisively date this decoration to 1661, thanks to restoration projects completed by Patrimonio Nacional in 2010. Thus, these frescoes reflect the will of the religious society who commissioned their installment, and the presence of 11 doors throughout this staircase exhibits the characteristics with which these nuns understood the possibilities of movement throughout the religious complex. There are 3 types of doors represented in the staircase: real, painted, and hidden, as our figure displays. The majority of these doors are real and painted with reflections and highlights that imitate golden adornment, like this door. These additions were not included merely to acquire a sumptuous quality to the space, because they could afford to use real gold if they so desired. But rather, they were to include the real doors within the artistic program, further blurring the lines between what is real and what is not. This concept is reinforced by the inclusion of painted doors within the frescoed scenes. I will only focus on one of the 4 doors, which appears at the beginning of the second ramp of the staircase. Here, the door sits perfectly to the side of a corridor filled with jumping cats. Anne-Marie Jordan, an expert in the figure of Juana of Austria, notes that Juana always had a lapdog with her, like her portrait previously shown. Other royal women, such as the Empress Maria, had animals with them in the convent, proving that these cats were meant to extend the actual space of the convent by depicting images with which the nuns had continual contact. As Ernst Gombrich, a psychologist of images, relates, imitation does not solely reflect the skill of the artist, but rather the mental capacity of the spectator to comprehend the artistic image. By placing this door opposite a real door, the artist forces the viewer to decipher which of the 2 is actually real, separating those with and without personal knowledge of the space. The contrast between these 2 doors is further exemplified by the presence of 2 hidden doors. Fake architecture painted onto the walls continues over both of these doors, obscuring their presence within the scene. Yet balustrades, like this one, constructed in front of each, accentuate their presence, creating a constant polarity between that which is hidden and that which is shown. The first one of these 2 doors leads to the right of the refectory and leads to the oratory, meaning that the decoration does not cover a secret passageway. Instead, the illusion breaks down as soon as one climbs the first step, something that every nun who read from the Book of Saints would have known. Therefore, all the visitors who did not partake in communal religious events, such as daily meals, miss the presence of this door. The other door is located to the left on the ground floor, leading towards the interior of the building. Although the balustrade is still constructed in front, it solely provides symmetry to the entire scene. Thanks to a meeting with the conservator Ana Garcia Sanz, I can confirm that this door leads to a closet, meaning that it does not permit passage to another space in the convent. As a consequence, we can conclude that these hidden doors demonstrate the necessity for the spectator to see the possibilities of a given space, even when they are covered with layers of paint. The trick presented by these doors is heightened by the constant symmetry, which forcibly aligns the various types. As soon as the spectator examines a space, the illusion dissolves, and she is able to distinguish the veracity of the images presented. This conclusion means that one must spend ample time examining the space, something that only the nuns who daily climb these stairs had the possibility to do. Therefore, these doors, in their 3 states, imply that a normal visitor could not have instantly perceived the very spatial solutions that this staircase offered as a nun could have. In these last few minutes of my presentation, I would like to turn our attention directly towards how the door functioned within the convent. Gaston Bachelard, a French theorist, comments that a door is an entire cosmos of the half-open, meaning that although contrasts of closed and opened exist, there is always a point in which the door is slightly ajar. This binary of outside versus inside can be readily seen in the protection of the cloistered door within the royal rooms. At this juncture, according to Juan Paloma, a nun sits on her side of the door, preventing anyone from venturing into the convent, while a lady-in-waiting sits on the other side. When the door is closed, these two worlds coexist separately. However, as soon as it opens, the lines are blurred, and no longer do the women exist in only one space. Such is the case during the mortal sickness of the Empress Maria. She was restricted to her personal bedroom, which was just beyond the Sala de los Reyes. Since her daughter was a nun in the convent, she was no longer able to enter this private room and care for her mother. After petitioning the Pope, the limit of the cloister was extended to include this personal room, permitting her daughter to enter through the prior cloister door and into her bedchamber. As a consequence, the nuns petitioned the Pope to sanctify any and all demands they desired for changes to their space, proving that spatial values were not fixed and could be rearranged by merely opening a door. The door also appears in written testimonies as permitting passage to the religious world, marking the moments of the devotional procession. The nuns recorded many of the processions that they celebrated throughout the year in manuscripts that were used to teach the new novices the practices of convent life. These manuscripts are useful because they allow the nuns to speak for themselves about their space and their daily practices. They describe changes in their cloister, especially those of the chapels, by installing ephemeral decorations such as candles, flowers, paintings, and incense to highlight the day's particular route. These seemingly small touches prepare the space for the procession, which is only accessed by passing through the threshold of the door. Moreover, the binary concept used to organize space was made physically manifest through the corporeal component of the procession, where these women traveled in two single-file lines. When they arrived at a given position within the convent, usually a column or corner, they paused and formed two separate groups that faced one another, where they then intoned specific psalms. A nun belonged to only one of these groups and was marked by her association to that group. What she sang and how she moved throughout the space was defined by her association to that specific choir. This pairing of left and right emphasizes the duality that the space acquired throughout the entire processional experience. And finally, to highlight how the court inserted itself into these religious processions and passed through the doors of the cloister, I will briefly examine the funeral of Catalina de Este of Modena. On January 26, 1628, soon after Catalina died, the community of Las Descalzas Reales celebrated her funeral. An anonymous account describes all of the activities performed by both the convent and members of the court. Initially, our author mentions all of the grandees in attendance and the particular order in which they were seated in the church, which was also the order in which they would join the procession. After Mass, the grandees followed behind the church leaders, passing through the secular door to the secular cloister, which is to the right of the church. They then joined the community at the choir, where the nuns became the leaders of the procession. In their two lines, they led the procession through the upper floor filled with illuminated chapels, descended by the principal staircase, and then finally circled the lower cloister, ending at an altar alongside the church. Upon its conclusion, the grandees and ministers returned to the church, and the nuns headed back to their devotional activities. At any funeral, a papal decree permitted 6 grandees to enter the cloister in order to carry the body of the deceased in the procession, because the nuns were not able to do so. I quote, "Although the deaths did not occur daily, this ceremony and that of an entrance, which followed a similar route, provided frequent exposure to the halls of Las Descalzas Reales. They visited the spaces designed to impress visitors, namely the corridors filled with the many chapels, and the main staircase, which contains our 3 types of doors, always following the guide of the nuns. Therefore, the court had access to the interior of the convent, but only where and how the nuns desired, which evokes the control these women employed over all the spaces in their convent. In conclusion, we witnessed in the decoration of the doors of the principal staircase that the various types, fake or real, were coupled together, forcing the viewer to distinguish which of the two functioned in a particular situation. This same binary existed throughout the procession, where the participants divided into 2 groups that traveled together, yet were constantly separated by the placement of their bodies. Recorded in the paintings and repeated in the documents, it appears that this conception of the binary was a specific way in which these nuns conceived of the spatiality of their convent. Therefore, Las Descalzas Reales, like a door, was the border between the religious and courtly worlds, continually dividing and unifying these two spheres to the benefit of the nuns that inhabited its enclosure. And for all of you who are visiting Madrid for this week, the convent is situated right next to El Corte Inglés in la Plaza de Sol, and you can go and have a guided tour where you can have access to all of my doors and all of these beautiful chapels. So, thank you.
Thank you. This is okay. Great. This is working. Thank you very much for your great presentation. It is something strange and weird when we have some two early modern papers about something that seems so unrelated to our world, which is supposed to be a secular world, although we are also questioning how secular we are in our practices and seeing these gestures, movements, and spaces and all of this from a secular point of view being a religious world. So I guess, of course, I'm sure you found similarities between your papers and you probably have some questions for each other. And I am sure that you also have questions for the teacher and for Jaime. And perhaps you don't have questions, but you want to discuss a little bit about what we have been hearing here. And as this is an academic act, but also it is a part of a brainstorming meeting of the Metabody Forum about the history and methodologies of movement gesture. I would like very much if you just be like at home and then feel free to ask whatever. Even if it looks like silly because we are all silly because we are in a transdisciplinary world right now, or metadisciplinary, I don't know. No? Do you find that we have any sort of these processions and gestures, ritual gestures in our world nowadays beyond religion?
Well, I can not easily, but in some way establish analogies between certain kinds of perceptual fixations or choreographies that you might have been describing, and the ones that I was describing in relation to religious interfaces, for example, amongst many others. So for me, it's a transversal question about choreographies of perception, which imply also choreographies, of course, or movement always implies, I think that I have learned from Brian and Katherine, actually, there is a certain immanent relation between movement, perception, sensation, and affect. And so, when we speak about choreographing movements, this always implies choreographing perception in some way. So I'm sure there are analogies between certain kinds of transcendental choreographies of perception and affect in religious contexts, and the ones we have in our society that places transcendence in our size and perhaps not very convenient for ecological account of information as transcendent entities, for example.
Great. I will be going from here to there and then back.
Hi, I have two questions to Gregory. How would you consider the introduction of the digital photography into your lecture? And the other question considers the design of the camera being not in control by human beings. How would you consider centering the camera, which is object in the field, but being Thank you for your questions. Well, my research is mostly historical, so I don't deal with contemporary